Hey Richard, what's good?
Hey, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I just got back from Los Angeles yesterday, and out there I went to Disneyland. I went to Nintendo World on two separate days. And that was
Nintendo World, yeah.
yeah, I've been interested in going there. And actually, I got lucky because well, it doesn't sound lucky, but there was like a hurricane in Los Angeles apparently, and I was getting like warnings on my phone. But that was the day that I went to Nintendo World was like raining, and apparently it was like hurricane rain, but it was just light rain, and so like nobody was there basically, and people have said like it was kind of unprecedented. Like the park was quite empty, and there was no lines for anything in Nintendo World, so I got to just kind of do everything, and that was a pretty fun. Pretty unique opportunity there.
Nice, that's ideal.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
Oh, I wish I could have seen it.
Yeah, I got some photos. My plan is because I was in Las Vegas for this DEF CON thing. I was in Los Angeles, so I took a bunch of like 2 or 3 second like video clips. I'm gonna try to put together like two different YouTube videos. Like one will be like just kind of my like footage from my Las Vegas trip, and then the other one like footage from this like Disneyland Nintendo World trip. And they'll just be like bizarre videos. I think like sort of philosophical videos that hopefully I'll combine like the footage in an interesting way and like narrate over it. But I'm at some point I'll do that whenever I have time.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I'm just figuring out my next steps. Sorry, figuring out my next steps for when I get out of the military. So I've been doing a lot of planning, seeking advice, get an idea of my finances and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a good busy, and I'm learning a lot. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a good. It's good to plan as much as possible because yeah, a big life change can be helpful if you plan a lot.
I had a certain number in my mind of where I would be financially by the time I cash out everything, sell my properties, and get some lump sums from Veterans Affairs Canada for the injuries that I got. Uh, but it looks like I might be coming up a little bit short there because I didn't realize that my place drastically went down in value. So I know that the military, when they post you, will top you up to a certain amount, but I don't know if it's 65,000. We'll see. So, I mean, that's for me to break even in 2 years, sitting on a property just to break even. That sucks.
I guess with any investment, like if you're not like forced to sell, sometimes you could always wait for the market to rebound and just like take another risk of like hold on to it, even if you're not renting it, just maybe in case the price recovers.
Yeah, I want to be able to take advantage of the benefits, but if the timing isn't right, then I'm already Airbnb my place remotely, so I know that's doable, and I can turn a huge profit doing that. So, uh, would rather not. I want to get rid of it, but then again, when I move to BC, I'm not selling my BC place right away. I have to hold on to it for at least 6 months because I'm kicking out a tenant, and I don't want to be dragged to court or anything like that. So I want to boot the tenant because I mean they're paying $500 a month under market value. So man, I just keep getting fucked. I'm getting a little angry because the timing is just bullshit. Like with the COVID and then sort of like this rebound after the fact or whatever's been going on, like the interest rates going up and market going down. It's just the bigger loser, the bigger fool theory or whatever it is. It's like I got caught holding the bag, and I'm just frustrated because I thought I was making all the right choices. Thought I was, always buying. I read somewhere
Well,
91.
yeah, I guess that's the thing is like you could have been like maybe you did make all the right choices, but there's never a guarantee. That's the only problem. But even like if you make the best choices with the information you had at the time, you probably did make some pretty good choices, but the market is like unpredictable, so it doesn't
Well,
always like work out. But you could. It's not like you could have done something differently.
usually it's going up. Yeah, there's the occasional blip, but uh, just going variable and buying. Like, don't rent, but buy. 91% of the time, it's better to buy than it is to just rent, and that, at least on Ontario. And then go variable and pay down your mortgage as fast as you can. So go bi-weekly, accelerated, and it's just like all of this fucking advice is old, antiquated. Now,
I've heard, yeah, I think buying is only better if you're like renting to someone else like constantly. And that's hard to do. It's like a second job kind of.
yeah, your house would be a liability otherwise. But I mean, if you have a family and you want to house them, that's another thing. But I don't got that. So as I learn more about money, I'm just like, I'm a little bit discouraged because I should be getting ahead. But it's
Yeah, same with me.
reading this market it's just so crazy. It's all over the place. There's things that I'm not tracking. So, okay, what I've discovered, what I've learned is land used to be wealth back in the old days. Okay, if you had land, you were wealthy. And then in the industrial age, it was production and industry, right? So if you had production, you were producing shit, that was wealth. And then now in the information age, having the most cutting edge information is wealth because you got to be ahead of the market when it starts to go down. You need to be aware that it's going to go down before it does so you can pull out your investments. So, like, for instance, the American government going from 3-star credibility down to 2. I mean, that people just pulled out. Like, and there's some huge decreases in the market because of that. And if you're not like tuned in and getting fed this information, so not just like here's the information, but like the so what's and then the recommendations, if you're not being fed that information before reality hits, you're going to be left holding the bag, like I've been repeatedly. And it's not like you can just learn from your mistake and the next time you'll see it happen. It's just like there's always new things happening because it's the world. So, like the government being shitty. Well, we already know the government's shitty, but then now the government not being credible. I mean, that just came out of the woodworks. Normally it's 3 stars. Like, it's gold rated, but now it's not. What happened to change that? And then, I mean, unless you're tuned in, you're not going to see that. And you're not, unless you've experienced already, you're not going to know the so what. So you could have the information, but if you don't have someone telling you the so what's and here's what you should do, I mean, there's like 2 different links there. There's the information, there's then the link to what could happen, and then there's the link to you should pull your stocks out, or you should do this, or you should do that. So it's like, and that's just one little thing, and things are happening all the time around us that can impact the stock market because it's emotionally driven.
Yeah, I
And
think it's so
yeah,
complicated. Yeah.
I want to be an investor, but I don't want to be. I want to be an investor, but I also don't want to be constantly plugged in. So, I'll pay for a subscription or 2, follow some like Fred Trading, and then there's this other one, Diva, a lady with a $4 million portfolio. Now, I mean, I don't know what Fred has. I mean, he lives in Dubai full time now and has 10,000 followers, and just he's like giving it back. He's paying it forward, kind of thing, because he's just so wealthy. He just chills and kind of wants to be social. Uh, you're following these people, see what they're doing. They can tell you where to invest, and perhaps that they have a team. So Fred actually does have a team that does the analytics. So, and he says they spend about 50 hours a week doing that stuff. So, because it's not, I imagine it's not 5 days a week; it's 7 days a week, but like less hours, or someone's not on for all 7 days. He probably scheduling doesn't matter; it's irrelevant. But he's going to have to be plugged in all the time every day of the week to track things before they happen. So, I mean, I want to be an investor. I mean, and everybody should strive to be an investor. And if you don't have the education, the knowledge, then you're just gambling. And I mean, a lot of people they just throw money blindly. Like, they'll go in and buy stocks for this company or that company, and 99% of the companies who are self-employed or who don't have a business understanding, they fail. So, like, I'm reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I moved on to the second book. First book is Crushed. Second book is the Cash Flow Quadrants. When I just looked at that title and that little chart, I was intimidated before I even opened the book. And then now, as I'm reading it, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. There's 4 quadrants and everything on the left side. So just imagine, like, you got an E top left, an S bottom left, B top right, and an I bottom right. And there's a line dividing them vertically, and there's a line dividing them horizontally. So you got 4 different quadrants. And most people are in the E, employed. So they work for somebody else, they work for a business, they work for the government, and they make money there. And then you get self-employed. And they work for themselves, highly technical, whatever. Everybody on the left side, they get taxed and then they get the rest of their pay. And on the right side, so they're taxed a lot more, 40, 50%. And on the right side, because of being incorporated, it's much less. It's like 15%, I think, in Canada. Could be less. I did see different percentages, so I'm not a finance guy, but much less. Much, much less. The business, too, I mean, if you pay all your expenses first, bring down your income, you can bring it down to zero almost.
Yeah.
You can make $1 million and then actually have made zero taxable income. So he talks about the different quadrants and like the path. He has a recommended path that really everybody should try to have their own business. And it's much more easy this day and age because of technology than it used to be. Plus with credit as well, right? So he's like, people should all strive to be business owners and then move to investing. So there are people who just learn investing and do that, but if you are a business owner first, one, you'll have the capital if your business is successful. Also, as a entrepreneur, business owner that has run a successful business and knows systems and knows finances and all that stuff, you can see which businesses are going to be successful and which are not. So then you can do your research and invest in the businesses that you know are going to be successful based off your experience. And so that's the recommended path. Now, not everybody does that. There are people who I know who are employed, self-employed, and doing investing and making a killing. But, I mean, they've also spent a lot of time teaching themselves. So there's a recommended path, and then there's the path that people take. And anyway, Robert's only a billionaire that's been doing this for over 20 years. So great book. Hey?
Yeah, it's hard with investing. I always come back to whatever we're doing with investing. I always compare it to like this baseline of putting money in the S&P 500, and that the graph for that, like S&P 500 being like this like index fund stock. And I feel like a lot of people say that it's very challenging to beat the rate of the S&P 500, which essentially just tracks like the American economy growth over time. And so if you put money in that, you get a return of about 8% a year. And it does go up and down like drastically, like year by year. Like I saw, like it dropped a lot in 2008 for the housing thing. And then right after COVID, it really dropped like massively for like a day. But then it always, throughout history, like since it's existed, it's always sort of recovered, and on average you get like 8% a year. And ever since I've had my money in it for a couple of years, that's what I've seen is like year by year it will drop significantly, but then whenever I take the average, I'm always getting about 8% return every year. And the way that works out is if you make 8% a year for about 10 years, then your money will like roughly double. And so that's kind of a decent deal, is if like if you kind of work backwards, like if you want like $1 million at retirement, then 10 years before retirement you should have 500,000, and 20 years before you should have like 250,000, and then like basically 30 or 40 years before you retire, if you've got like 50,000 in the S&P 500, then that will, it'll double until you're like 60, and then it will be like $1 million, like, as a ballpark thing, like on average. And then basically if you're doing any other sort of investing, then the idea would be to try to beat that, because it's very easy to just buy this like S&P 500 index fund. But even like it's been shown in a lot of times, like even people that are like really watching the market and like playing all these like moves and everything, they often still average about 8 to 10% a year return. And
Yeah,
obviously, like, if they have if they, if they're managing like a hedge fund, and the hedge fund is like a couple hundred million, then if they make like 8% in a year, that's like, $800,000 or something they could take home, because they just have such a big pool of money. But yeah, I've heard that it's very challenging to beat the S&P 500, and like even like people like Warren Buffett, they say that it's very challenging to beat it, and like Warren Buffett's company often only beats it by a little bit, I think, historically. And so I always, as complex as investing gets, I always think like you can do pretty well just by buying this one like S&P 500 thing, and then just doing like a long term, like you don't have to watch it or anything.
yeah,
And
it
that's
sounds like a
pretty nice.
safe way. Yeah, Warren Buffett,
Yeah.
one of the greatest investors. He
Yeah.
says quite a few things too, but I can't remember all the quotes. But it's more than just playing it safe. So it sounds like S&P 500 is just a safe fund. You're going to get growth, and the wealthy barber
I guess
guy.
it's safe. It's like safe long term, but it's quite variable. Like you might lose like 50% in a year, and then it will come back like 2 years later or something. So it's
Yeah,
not very safe like short term, but I think it's safe long term, which is a nice trade off. Like if you just don't need the money now, you can put it in there, and you pretty much know it'll grow long term, but you won't be able to take it out like as you want short term.
yeah, yeah. And a couple points on that. It seems like a lot of people are doing that, using the market as sort of a retirement plan. Hoping for really hoping. So, and we all know hope is not a plan, because you have your $1 million saved up, but then the market dips when you need to pull it out when you retire. Then you're fucked, because as soon as you pull out your money when it's dipped, you lose so much buying power. Because as I might have said last time, or I've been saying to a lot of people, if you pull out 50% of your money, in order to make it back, it takes 100%. So if your money dips when the market's low, which we see it happen all the time, because it's emotionally driven, then you're up a creek without a paddle, and you have to find another way to exist, or be frugal or whatever, which I can do. I mean, if you know how to live within your means and can spend like nothing, and you are content being in an RV, you can reduce your expenses to almost nothing, and you have a way to make money that covers your expenses. According to the definition of wealthy, the definition of wealthy, you're wealthy, because you're producing enough income from your assets. To say if you own assets, you need to own assets. Actually, you're producing enough money from your assets to cover your expenses. No, you don't need to have a lot as long as your expenses are low.
Yeah.
But yeah, circling back, it's like the wealthy barber was saying, I forget his name there, but the market on average performs well enough. It grows. It will grow, because that's just how it works. So on average, It's 8%, 10%. If you do the safe funds, then you will, on average, grow with it, which is good. I mean, that's playing it safe, and a lot of people who don't know the market or how to invest, like people who are employed or self-employed, they'll hand their money off to an accountant or whoever else to invest for them, an advisor, and hope. And if the advisor did a good job, then they got some money when it comes time to retirement. If the investor was shit, well, then they're fucked. Luckily, I had a decent advisor, and I put it in a good portfolio, and I made a good return before COVID hit. But I'm just kind of recoiling from that. All that time was wasted. And why it was wasted was because I didn't take advantage of an incredible opportunity. So I lost a bunch of money because of COVID. And so many people profited from it because when it became a low market, that's when you want to buy.
Yeah.
Right? When things are low. And if you can forecast that it's going to dip and you pull your money out and you wait for that dip and then you invest and then it goes back up, you're laughing.
That's near impossible, though. I think even people watching it, it's very hard, I think, to catch it like exactly. Like I think more often than not, people end up messing it up and they sell like low and then they rebuy high, and
but there are things
in retrospect, but it's super hard.
There are things you can set, at least with Wealthsimple, and I'm sure in other platforms, where as soon as your stock dips a little bit, as soon as you lose any money, it sells. And then that way, if you're just wanting to ride the up wave, then you do so without having to pay attention. And then as soon as you lose anything, it's sold. And you don't have to worry about actually dipping and riding the big waves, right? So, I mean, there are ways to kind of save yourself the ass pain of losing your money and selling it at a loss. But yeah, people, what happens is they'll invest and then it will dip and then they'll panic and they'll sell. And they'll take a loss because they sold. Because again, it's emotionally driven and people don't know what they're doing. And, I'm starting to think that the wealthy are banking on that because, they're just pouring money into the stock market because they don't know what they're doing. And so, there's the actual value of a company and then there's like just people throw money into it because they think it's going to pop and then it creates all this extra fluff. And it's not real. So like Bitcoin, when it went up to 90,000, 96,000, there was no value to back that. That was just hype. And then as we see, it went way down, drastically down. And I was caught holding the bag. So the thing is like everybody who invests, everybody will lose money. Because it's just how it is. But it's through the failures that you learn and you grow and you better yourself. And if you're not willing to take risks, you're not going to fail, and you're not going to learn, you're not going to grow. And people who want to play it safe, they're never going to be rich. They're never going to be wealthy. Now, I should rephrase that. People that value security over freedom and want to play it safe and aren't willing to ever extend themselves won't ever be wealthy.
Yeah,
there are
playing it safe,
Yeah, so there are people from the E and the S side that are playing with investments. You're doing it, I'm doing it. Lots of people are doing it. Part because there's a necessity for it. I got a pension with the military. A lot of people don't have pensions. Things have changed from the industrial age. Pensions aren't guaranteed anymore. They're pay of contribution or whatever it's called, or return contribution. I always forget the lingo. It's like what you pay into is what you get out, and if you don't pay enough for long enough, then you just get pay of contribution back. So I'll have to master what it's called, but things have changed. The government has changed that. And then the other thing is the government's seeing that fund as almost a revenue stream instead of something that they need to be putting away. And they're spending people's pensions. So, as we're getting older, there may not be any money for us. And that's terrifying when you really think about it. if you can't take care of yourself, that is, or if you can't work for a living. People should be able to retire at a certain age. And now it's not guaranteed if they play it safe, if they're E or S only. So a lot of people are leaning towards I, putting money into tax-free savings accounts, RRSPs, hoping that the market is going to grow, which it does on average, but hoping that when it comes time to retirement, that it's not going to dip. And so, I mean, there are things to counter that, like infinity banking and having a life insurance policy that you can tap into, pull out equity, and pay yourself during these low periods. But that's not an option for everybody. So it's almost like in everybody's best interest to become financially savvy, to understand finances. So I got to say, like, I was in debt all the time when I was in university. Got into RMC, and they gave me a credit card. I think it was Bank of Montreal. And I took it. And I maxed it out. And we made nothing in RMC. So I lived way beyond my means. I was always in debt. I was paying it off, always in arrear or whatever. And even though I had even extra income coming in from the Children's Aid Society, I had an extra $1,000 extended care and maintenance, which really was nothing, but better than the $600 we got. So I had some money. Not bad for a kid going to school. But I was always in debt, man. I was taking everybody out to dinner, buying Samsung, everything, and high-end clothes, whatever. And it wasn't until I read The Wealthy Barber Returns that I realized what I was doing. That was my first taste of financial education. And I immediately got myself out of debt. Well, it took a while, but I got myself out of debt. I understood how to pay a credit card properly. Like paying the statements instead of paying what I thought it was that I owed.
Right. Yeah, that's a big important step. That's a good turnaround that you made at some point.
Yeah, and then the second time I read Wealthy Barber Returns, which was in Borden, then I started investing. And when I was younger, I got awarded $10,000. I put 5 into a tax-free savings account, or just pretty sure it was that, and then the rest I spent. And that 5,000 grew quite a bit over the years, but I pulled it out because I thought I needed it. And I've learned you don't touch something like that; you leave it. You can put it elsewhere if it's not performing well, but you don't spend your. I want to call it an asset because it was making some money. The money was working for me, so in my mind, that's an asset. And I spent it, but I made the right decision, and everybody was saying it was the right decision, but nobody taught me why. No one explained finances to me. It was all just super complicated. They don't teach it in school, and that's a problem. They need to. So
yeah, that's true.
I would encourage everybody to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Actually, no, because the more people that become financially savvy, then the more competition there is. But if people want to take control of their lives, have freedom, true freedom, not just security, then they got to seek financial education. And that book is the best book to start with. I had no idea.
I just wish that with all this info, I wish we could know how it's all going to work out in the end in advance. Like, whatever decisions we make today, we're going to have to wait until basically the end of our life to really figure out, how it all paid off. And so we never, as accurate as we can be and get as many sources as can tell us like what to do and we be smart about it, we never really know for sure if it's going to work out or not, until the end. It would be nice just somehow to know in advance, like, if we set things up today, what is it, the exact number, that it's going to be when we retire, like what are we going to have? But I feel like no matter what, we end up waiting until that day when we retire to actually figure out or to actually see what it is in practice. And I guess, maybe there's no way to know, but it would be nice if we could just have that like comfort of knowing like, oh, if we do this exact thing, it's going to work out for sure. But without knowing it, it's just like something to always wonder about.
Well, whatever you think you're going to have, the government's going to take a lot of it from you. So tax is the number one wealth killer. And if you don't want tax to rape you, the government to rape you of your money, and I'm not using that word lightly because I'm seeing the taxes and what's coming out repeatedly. And then like I'm doing Airbnb now, and it's like tax, accommodation tax, and then fucking income tax, and then there's another tax. And it's just like, oh my sweet, are you fucking like? I'm angry. I'm getting angry with how much tax there is. And you think you're gonna have all this wealth by the time you retire, but as soon as you want to touch that $1 million, it's like cut in half. If not, most of it's taken away. It's not yours. It's just you're gonna make some money off of it. You're gonna maybe make the 10% if you're lucky if the market's good, or might not be good. But that money when you die, it's gonna be taxed. There might be. I think there's a way to hand it off, but a lot of the times, if it's in an RRSP, for instance, it's disappearing. It's gonna get cut in half by the time it reaches your dependents or your recipients, the recipients of your will, and that's horrible, man. I mean, all that time is just taken away, gone. They just rip it from you. And that's where the life insurance policy comes in. But I need to learn more about that. And again, it's not for everybody. I think it's a tool for the wealthy, and protects their wealth and allows them to pass it on to the next generation. And it's what keeps
I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
It keeps the rich richer, or lets the rich get richer, and then it keeps the middle class and poor. It's hard to break into the wealthy and rich category, but it's not impossible. But you can't do it by playing it super safe and not take any risks and not growing. And this is the final thought that I have before I gotta go. Is it's like we're bred in school to be blue collar, white collar, and they instill the fear of failure in us. It's all about perfection. If we make a mistake, we aren't good. Straight A students are the ones that make the least amount of mistakes. When you really think about it, we're not encouraged to fail in school. We're encouraged not to fail. But it's through trying and failing, that's how we get the most experience. It's how we grow in life. So many people are crippled by the fear of failure, they don't even take any action. And I was one of them. I was one of them for so long that I wasted so many opportunities, Richard. I wasted the opportunity of making $80,000 in 2008, second year RMC. I had like pretty much my mentor. He would have been my mentor still. Like a businessman who started his own business, who had different quality assurance branches to ensure that retailers were representing the brands properly. He wanted me to be the regional representative for Kingston as a kid because he saw my work ethic and he saw that I had potential to grow, and I shut it down because I was afraid. I was afraid of failing. And I was beating myself up for it, but when I think about it, it's not my fault. It's the institution. It's how we're bred, and it's wrong, and it needs to change. But it's not going to change. Not in the public school system. Because they want their blue-collar, white-collar people, and they want us to be financially literate. So, food for thought, man. Get on the books and invest in yourself so that you can invest in your future.
Yeah.
But I gotta go, bro. Catch you next week.
All right. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Yeah.
Okay. Take care.
All right. See you.